Okay, so let's talk about something that I think every single one of us has run into, that huge, frustrating gap between knowing how to use a tool and really truly understanding what you're building with it. It's where most of us get stuck. And today, we're going to figure out how to get unstuck.
So just think about it for a second. When was the last time you learned the basics of something new? Maybe a piece of software or a new skill, and you felt that first little rush of, hey, I can do this. And then just nothing. You hit a wall. You could follow the instructions, sure, but you couldn't actually create anything new. Well, that incredibly common feeling has a name.
All right, let's dive into exactly why this happens. Because, spoiler alert, it has nothing to do with you not being smart enough or not trying hard enough. It's all about a missing piece in the way we usually learn things. We call this the 101 problem. You know the drill, right? You take the intro course, you learn what all the buttons do, you get your little certificate, and then your boss says, okay, go be productive. But when you actually try to apply it to a real-world project, it all falls apart. The results look kind of generic, or maybe just wrong. And before you know it, you're just going back to the old way you used to do things. Sound familiar? It's because we're taught the what, but we completely skip the when and the why. Now, this 101 problem doesn't just happen randomly. It's almost always caused by two very specific, very sneaky learning traps. And the tricky thing is, they're super easy to fall into, but almost impossible to see when you're in them. So, the first trap is the illusion of simplicity. This is where a beginner finds a tutorial online and follows it step by step, perfectly. But the second something goes wrong, and let's be honest, something always goes wrong, they're completely lost. They have no idea how to troubleshoot because they were just copying, not understanding. An expert, on the other hand, they get the why behind each step. They see the underlying structure. And then you've got the total opposite problem, which is just as dangerous, the knowledge trap. This happens when you actually know so much about a topic, you know all the exceptions, all the edge cases, all the things that could go wrong, that you're just paralyzed by it all. Think of a musician trying to mix a song, but they're so worried about a million technical details that they can't just make it sound good. They're stuck analyzing when they should be creating. And this is what leads to that awful feeling, the curse of the intermediate learner. It's such a frustrating place to be. You're not a newbie anymore, but you're definitely not an expert. You know just enough to see all the potential problems, but not quite enough to know how to solve them with any real confidence. So, how do we break this curse? Well, the way out isn't to just learn more facts or watch more tutorials. The solution is to fundamentally change how you're thinking. We need to stop collecting these little isolated bits of information and start building mental frameworks. Let me show you what I mean. So, framework thinking is all about building mental models. You basically stop trying to memorize every single rule for every single situation. Instead, you focus on understanding the deep down, internal logic of how the whole system works. It's like you're not memorizing turn-by-turn directions, you're building a map of the entire city in your head. Now, this is a fantastic example of what building a framework actually looks like. Let's say you're trying to write code that generates a tree. A simple tutorial might just give you the final perfect code, but a framework thinker builds it from the ground up. First, you just spawn branches randomly, and you look at it and go, yikes, that's a top-heavy mess. So you add a principle. The higher up the tree, the less likely a branch is to spawn. Okay, that's better. But now the branches are all clumped together. So you add another principle. Every time a branch spawns, the chance of another one spawning right next to it gets cut in half. You see? You're not following a recipe. You're reasoning your way to a better result. And this just nails the core idea. You're moving away from a rigid, brittle rule like set the droop angle to 45 degrees and toward a flexible, powerful principle like I need the branches to feel heavier and droop more the farther they get from the trunk. The first rule works for one tree. The second principle works for any tree. But here's the thing. A framework is just the map. To actually navigate the real world, with all its messy complexities, you need one more absolutely crucial ingredient: judgment. And the key insight here is that judgment isn't some magical gift you're born with. It is a skill, and you build it. But, and this is so important, it doesn't come from just doing the same thing over and over again. It comes from doing something, and then stopping and actively reflecting on it, asking yourself, okay, what specifically isn't working here, and why? Almost everybody skips that reflection step because without that reflection, your practice is just guesswork. You're just nudging values up and down, tweaking settings, hoping you get lucky and something clicks.
That's not a strategy for getting better. That's just playing the lottery. And this is not a small thing. This process, building that layer of judgment, is what separates the 20% of people who truly master a new tool or a new skill from the 80% who just kind of dabble with it for a while and eventually give up. Okay, so let's put all these pieces together. Let's look at what this path to genuine mastery really looks like when you're on it. It's all about integration. True mastery isn't about having a learning phase and then a doing phase and then an evaluating phase. It's about weaving all of them together into one fluid process. You're learning as you're doing, you're evaluating your own work in real time, not waiting until the end. You can zoom way into the tiniest detail and then zoom right back out to see the big picture, all without missing a beat. Just look at this comparison. It makes it so clear. The person who's stuck just follows the rules blindly. The master understands why the rules exist in the first place, which also means they know when it's okay to break them. The person who's stuck sees failure as this terrible thing to be avoided. The master sees failure as valuable data. It's just information. And when a new problem comes up, the beginner tries to jam an old solution into it. The master adapts their principles to fit the new situation. Which side of this chart do you want to be on? Because the payoff for making this mental shift is just huge. Your work becomes more consistent, more adaptable, but even more than that, you get that deep personal satisfaction that only comes from genuinely, truly understanding what you're doing. So, I'll leave you with a question to think about. In your own work, in your own hobbies, where are you just following a recipe? And where can you start to really understand the principles of cooking? What's one area where you're going to commit to building a real framework instead of just following someone else's rules? Trust me, the journey is absolutely worth it.